She looked her own fiancé up and down. Then she laughed. It was not a nice laugh. It was loud and cold, and it made every person in the ballroom turn to look at the man standing by the door. He was wearing a cheap security uniform. Nobody had looked at him twice all night. "Get him out of here," she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. The guests laughed with her. A few even clapped. Nobody in that room knew who they were laughing at. They did not know the man in the uniform owned the building they were standing in. They did not know he owned the company that paid their salaries. He owned more money than most of them would ever see in their whole lives. But what happened moments later was not revenge. It was one quiet sentence. One simple truth. And it turned every laughing face in that room to stone. Stay until the end. This is not really a story about money. It is a story about one disguise. A disguise that showed everyone in that ballroom exactly who they really were, deep down, when they thought no one important was watching. Some people showed kindness. Some people showed cruelty. And one woman was about to learn that the man she had spent all night mocking was the same man she was supposed to marry. She had no idea what was coming. Neither did anyone else in that room. By the end of the night, nothing would ever look the same to them again. Not the guard at the door, not the woman in the silver dress, and not the empire hiding quietly behind a cheap black uniform. His name was Adrian Kong. He was 34 years old. His father was a powerful Korean businessman. His mother was a strong, respected Nigerian woman. Together, they built Kong Global Holdings, a security and logistics company worth $80 billion. Almost nobody knew the family's other secret. Long ago, Adrian's grandfather led one of the most feared crime families in Asia. Over 40 years, he had turned that family into something new. A clean, legal, respected company. Adrian was set to inherit all of it. But a week before he was named CEO, Adrian did something strange. He put on a plain security guard uniform. For 30 days, no one would know who he really was. He would work the front doors of his own company like any normal employee. His grandfather's last words never left his mind. If you want to know who deserves power, watch how they treat people who have none. Waiting at the top of the company was his fiancée, Victoria Ashford. She was beautiful, smart, and loved status. Their engagement had been arranged between two rich families. She had never actually met Adrian in person. She believed he was overseas, getting ready to take over the company. She had no idea she was about to walk past him every single day. Around Adrian, other people would play a part in his month undercover. An elderly janitor who had worked there for 30 years. A young cleaner just trying to get by. A kind receptionist named Zara. A nervous security supervisor. A wise old board chairman who had once been his grandfather's best friend. And a company full of workers who loved to gossip about the mysterious heir nobody had ever seen. Tomorrow, Adrian puts on the uniform. Nobody will recognize him. Not even the woman he is supposed to marry. Adrian showed up before the sun rose, before the lights in the building even turned on. The uniform felt stiff and strange. He had worn tailored suits his whole life. This was new. He kind of liked it. By 8 in the morning, the lobby was full of busy people. Most of them did not even look at him. A young manager walked up and shoved an empty coffee cup into his hands. "My meeting starts in 5 minutes. Go get me another coffee." "I need to stay at my post, sir," Adrian said. The man rolled his eyes and mumbled something about lazy security guards. A little while later, a woman dropped a huge stack of papers all over the floor. She just stood there, staring at him, waiting. Adrian knelt down and picked up every page. She grabbed them back without saying thank you. But not everyone treated him badly. An elderly janitor was struggling to push a heavy cart down the hallway. Adrian walked over without being asked. "Thank you, son," the old man said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "My back is not what it used to be." They pushed the cart together. Later, Adrian helped a young cleaner carry heavy supplies upstairs. He held the elevator door for visitors. He helped a lost delivery driver find the right office. No matter how rude people were to him, he stayed calm and polite. During his lunch break, Adrian opened a small black notebook. He did not write down names. He wrote down what people did. Kind when no one is watching. Rude the second they think it does not matter. He was not judging job titles. He was studying hearts. Across the city, Victoria was getting ready for the company's big founder celebration. Stylists surrounded her with dresses and jewelry. She could not stop talking about the mysterious billionaire she was about to finally meet in person. They say he is amazing, she told a friend, smiling into the mirror. Tomorrow night, the whole world finally sees us together. She had no idea. She had already met him 3 times that week, and ignored him every single time. Back at the office, the day kept going the same way. Some people were kind to Adrian for no reason at all. Some people were cruel because they thought it did not matter. Adrian just kept watching, kept helping, and kept writing quiet little notes in his notebook. He was not trying to catch anyone doing something wrong. He just wanted to see who these people really were, deep down, before he decided who deserved to stand beside him at the top of his company. Tomorrow would bring even bigger tests. And Victoria still had no idea the guard she barely noticed was about to become the center of her whole life. Day 2 started just like the first. Adrian stood at the front door before the sun was even fully up. An elderly man walked in, hands shaking, holding a letter. "I have a meeting here," he said softly. "But I cannot find the right office." People rushed past him without stopping. Adrian did not. "May I see your letter, sir?" He looked at it. "You need the 5th floor. I will take you there myself." The old man's face relaxed. "Thank you, son." Not many people stop to help an old man anymore. A little later, Adrian heard crying near the front desk. A small girl stood alone, holding a pink backpack. "I cannot find my mommy," she whispered. Adrian knelt down to her eye level. "Do not worry. We will find her together." Within minutes, her mother came running across the lobby, tears in her eyes, and hugged her daughter tight. "Thank you," she said again and again. Adrian just smiled. "I am glad she is safe." Not every moment that day was kind. At lunchtime, a manager stormed toward a young cleaner, shouting that his watch was missing. "Search her bag," he yelled. The young woman turned pale. "I did not take anything." Nobody stood up for her. Nobody except Adrian. "Sir," he said calmly, "maybe check your desk again before you accuse someone." The manager frowned. "Are you telling me how to do my job?" Right then, another employee walked in holding the missing watch. "You left this in the meeting room." The manager grabbed it and walked away without saying sorry. The cleaner lowered her head, hiding tears. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered to Adrian. That afternoon, a delivery driver arrived with important medical supplies. A senior executive told him to park somewhere else because his old van made the entrance look messy. Adrian checked the papers. "These supplies are for the company clinic," he said. "They are needed today." He helped carry every box inside himself. Meanwhile, across the building, a very different scene was happening. Victoria walked through the ballroom where the party would be held the next night. She snapped at a waitress for a glass that was not clean enough. She scolded a florist for putting flowers in the wrong spot. She even told a cleaner to use the back hallway so guests would not have to see the staff. Meanwhile, board members rushed to smile at rich investors, agreeing with everything they said. Only one person treated everybody the same. Zara, the receptionist, greeted cleaners, drivers, and executives with the exact same warm smile. Adrian watched quietly from across the lobby. He opened his notebook and wrote one more line. "Real character shows up loudest when nobody important is watching." Tomorrow night, the truth would finally come out. And almost nobody in that building was ready for it. By sunset, the Kong Global headquarters looked less like an office building and more like a palace. Big glass chandeliers filled the ballroom with golden light. White flowers lined the marble stairs. A live band played soft music while shiny black cars pulled up one after another outside. The richest people in the city stepped onto the red carpet in expensive suits and sparkling gowns. Cameras flashed non-stop. Reporters buzzed around, all asking the same question. Who was the mysterious heir of Kong Global? Inside, waiters carried trays of drinks through the crowd. Board members greeted important guests with big smiles. Every little detail had been planned for months. Only one person in the whole ballroom looked out of place. Adrian Kong stood quietly by the main entrance, still wearing the same black security uniform he had worn all week. His name badge simply said, A. Kong. Most guests walked right past him. Some handed him their coats without even looking at his face. Others pointed at their empty glasses, expecting him to act like a waiter. Adrian just smiled, said thank you, and opened the door for every single guest. Then the camera flashes outside and suddenly gets louder and brighter. Victoria had arrived. She stepped out of a white limousine wearing a silver dress that sparkled under the lights. Diamonds shone around her neck. Every camera turned toward her at once. She smiled with total confidence, waving at the reporters calling her name. Tonight, she believed, the whole world would finally see her standing next to her billionaire fiancé. As she walked through the doors, her eyes landed on Adrian. Her smile disappeared. "Oh," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "It is that annoying security guard again." A few people turned to look. Victoria walked straight toward him, her heels clicking sharply across the marble floor. She had no idea what was about to happen. She had no idea that the man standing quietly in front of her, holding the door open, was the same man whose name was on every wall in that building. The same man she was supposed to marry. For now, all she saw was a guard in a cheap uniform, standing in her way. And she was about to make the biggest mistake of her entire life, in front of every important person she knew. The band kept playing. The lights kept glowing. Nobody in that ballroom, not even Victoria, understood what was about to unfold in the next few minutes. But it would change everything, for everyone standing in that room. Victoria walked straight toward Adrian, her eyes cold and sharp. "I hope you have learned to stay out of important people's way," she said. Adrian gave a small, polite nod. "Good evening, Miss Ashford. Do not smile at me like we are equals." A few nearby guests laughed quietly. She held out her handbag without asking. "Hold this. And do not lose it. It probably costs more than you make in a whole year." The laughter grew louder. Several executives smiled awkwardly, saying nothing, because they did not want to upset the woman they believed would soon run the company. A few minutes later, Victoria came back for her bag. But it was gone. Adrian had handed it to a guest services worker, exactly like the rules required. She did not wait to hear the explanation. "You touched my things without permission?" Her voice rose, sharp enough for people across the room to hear. "I knew hiring cheap security would make this company look bad." Reporters lifted their cameras, sensing a moment. "And now you are blocking the entrance," she snapped. "Do you enjoy embarrassing important people?" The entrance behind him was completely clear. Nobody was blocked. "I am sorry if there has been a misunderstanding," Adrian said calmly. "A misunderstanding?" Victoria laughed, cold and sharp. "No. The misunderstanding is that someone like you thinks you belong anywhere near this party." She stepped even closer, folding her arms. "Tell me, how much do they even pay you? I am sure it is just enough to keep that uniform on your back." More laughter rippled through the crowd. Some guests looked away, pretending not to hear. Others enjoyed the show far too much. She glanced at his name badge, then shook her head. "Men like you," she said, loud enough for the whole ballroom, "should know your place." The words hung in the air like smoke. Even the band seemed to play quieter. The elderly janitor stared down at the floor. Zara, the receptionist, looked away, clearly embarrassed for him. The young cleaner from the day before stood frozen near the back, wishing anyone, would speak up. Adrian could have ended everything right there with one sentence. He could have said his real name. He could have exposed the truth in front of every person watching. Instead, he gave a small, respectful nod. I am sorry if I have caused any trouble this evening. He had done nothing wrong. He apologized anyway. The apology shocked a few people nearby. Some thought the guard was simply weak. Others quietly wondered why a man with such calm eyes refused to defend himself, even when he had every right to. Only Adrian knew the real answer. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest. It is the one who already knows the truth is coming, and does not need to rush it. The laughter in the ballroom slowly faded. Something in the room felt different now, even if nobody could say exactly what. Adrian stayed at his post, calm as ever, greeting every guest who walked in like nothing had happened. Most men would have argued back. Some would have walked away angry. But this security guard acted like the insults could not touch him at all. Then board chairman Samuel Choi walked in through a private door. He had silver hair and a quiet, powerful presence. Every executive in the room stood up the moment they saw him. As he walked past Adrian, their eyes met for just a second. The chairman gave Adrian a small, respectful nod. Not the fast, careless nod you give an employee. This was the kind of nod one important person gives to another. Adrian nodded back, just as calmly, then looked away. Two board members standing nearby saw the whole thing. Did you see that? One whispered. The chairman never greets security like that, the other whispered back. Never. Meanwhile, the elderly janitor pushed his cart past Adrian. Without thinking, the words slipped out of his mouth. Good evening, young ma. He froze. His eyes went wide. He quickly caught himself. Good evening, young man. Adrian smiled kindly. Good evening, Mr. Harris. The old man hurried away, his hands shaking slightly. Not far off, Mr. Park, the security supervisor, watched the whole strange moment with growing worry. All week, he had wondered why the chairman kept asking him for updates about the new guard, instead of asking about actual department managers. Something was going on. He just could not figure out what. Outside, a long black car rolled through the front gates, followed by 3 more just like it. Sunlight bounced off the shiny company logo on every door. Every board member in the ballroom turned toward the windows. They are here, someone whispered. The heir has finally arrived. Excitement spread through the crowd like electricity. Guests straightened their jackets. Reporters raised their cameras, ready. Victoria smiled and checked her reflection quickly in a nearby mirror. This is it, she whispered to herself. I am finally about to meet my fiancé. She glanced toward the entrance and noticed something strange. The chairman was standing unusually close to the security guard. Mr. Park looked nervous. A few board members kept sneaking glances at the man in the black uniform. For one tiny second, doubt crossed her face. Then she laughed it off completely. Impossible, she muttered under her breath. He is just a security guard. She turned back toward the stage, brushing the strange feeling away. She had absolutely no idea that the man she had spent the entire evening humiliating was only moments away from walking onto that very stage. Not as a guard. As the owner of everything in the room, including the building itself. The lights in the ballroom slowly dimmed. The band stopped playing. Every conversation faded away as a single spotlight lit up the stage. Chairman Samuel Choi stepped up to the microphone, calm and confident. His silver hair caught the light as the crowd greeted him with warm applause. Good evening, he said, smiling out at everyone. Thank you for celebrating another year with Kong Global. More clapping filled the room. Tonight is also very special, he continued, because we will officially introduce the next leader of this company. Excitement buzzed through the crowd. Guests leaned forward. Reporters lifted their cameras. Victoria smiled proudly, sure that the moment she had been waiting for had finally come. But then the chairman glanced toward the entrance. "Before I introduce our new chief executive officer," he said, "I would like to invite one of our security officers to join me on stage." Confused whispers spread through the room. Did he say security officer? There must be some mistake. Victoria frowned, unsure what was happening. The chairman looked directly at Adrian. "Mr. Adrian," he said, "would you please come forward?" Without rushing, Adrian took the radio off his shoulder and handed it to Mr. Park. "Thank you," he said quietly. Then he walked through the middle of the ballroom. Hundreds of eyes followed him. The same guests who had ignored him all night now stepped aside, clearing a path without even thinking about it. Victoria stared, completely confused. What is happening? Adrian climbed the steps and stood beside the chairman. For one long second, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Then something nobody expected happened. Chairman Choi turned toward Adrian and bowed. It was not a small, quick nod. It was a deep, respectful bow. Every single board member stood up immediately and bowed as well. Soft applause started, then grew louder, spreading through the entire crowd until the whole ballroom was clapping. Only Victoria stood frozen, unable to move. The chairman stepped back to the microphone. "It is my greatest honor," he said, "to introduce the man who has quietly spent the past month walking these halls, not as an owner, but as a servant." He looked proudly at Adrian. "This is Adrian Kong." The applause stopped completely. "Our chairman." Silence. "Our owner." Several guests gasped out loud. "And the sole heir to the entire Kong Global Group." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The words felt too big, too unbelievable to understand right away. Victoria's face turned completely pale. Her fingers loosened without her even noticing. The crystal glass in her hand slipped and crashed onto the marble floor, the sharp sound echoing through the silent room. She stared at Adrian with wide, shaking eyes. The security guard she had mocked all night. The man she had ordered around like a servant. The man she had told to know his place. He had been her billionaire fiancé the entire time. The silence in the ballroom felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. Nobody knew what to say. The same people who had laughed at the security guard minutes earlier now stared at the floor, too ashamed to meet his eyes. Victoria's breathing shook. She looked from the chairman to the board members, then back at Adrian. This cannot be true," she whispered. "It is completely true," the chairman said. Victoria took one slow step forward. "Adrian, I did not know. If I had known who you were." Adrian raised his hand gently. "You would have treated me differently." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. They both knew he was right. Tears filled her eyes. "I am sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me." Adrian looked at her without anger and without pride. His voice stayed calm. "Victoria, I was never testing loyalty." He paused, letting everyone in the room hear his next words clearly. "I was looking for kindness." The sentence hit harder than any shout could have. Kindness should never depend on someone's job, their clothes, or their paycheck. He slowly pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. The engagement ring rested inside. He closed the box again without opening it. "Our engagement ends tonight." Victoria covered her mouth as tears rolled down her face. She wanted to explain. She wanted to fix it. But there was nothing left to say. Adrian turned to face the crowd. "This company will always reward character before position," he said. He smiled warmly at Zara. "Kizara James." She looked around, surprised. "For treating every single person with equal respect, no matter who they were, you are now our Executive Guest Relations Director, starting immediately." Zara's eyes filled with tears as the whole room clapped for her. Next, he looked toward the young cleaner. "Sophia." She stepped forward nervously. "You worked hard even when people treated you unfairly. Kong Global will pay for your full university education. When you finish, a job will be waiting here for you." Sophia burst into tears. "Thank you, sir." Adrian walked over to the elderly janitor next. For over 30 years, Mr. Harris had quietly cared for this building without ever asking for praise. Adrian shook his hand with both of his. "You helped build the heart of this company," he said. "Today, we finally honor your years of faithful service." The entire ballroom rose to its feet, clapping loudly. The old man's eyes shone with emotion. Finally, Adrian turned to Mr. Park. "You followed the rules, even when it was hard. Starting today, you are our new chief of corporate security." Mr. Park bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Chairman." Then Adrian's face turned serious. "As for those who used power to shame or hurt people who could not fight back, an independent review begins tomorrow morning." Several executives went pale. No names were said out loud. None were needed. Everyone already knew exactly who he meant. For the first time all night, the applause was not for money or status. It was for justice. And this time, every single clap was earned. 3 days later, before the city had fully woken up, Adrian stood alone at his grandfather's memorial in the quiet garden behind the family estate. The morning air was cool and fresh. Birds sang softly in the trees nearby. There were no cameras this time. No board members. No reporters. Just a grandson quietly keeping a promise. Adrian looked down at the black security badge that had stayed pinned to his uniform every single day for the past month. The plastic was scratched. The edges were worn smooth. To most people, it would look like nothing more than a cheap name tag. To Adrian, it had become the greatest lesson of his entire life. He knelt down and gently placed the badge beneath the stone memorial. A small smile crossed his face. "You were right, grandfather," he said softly. He looked at the words carved into the stone. "Power never reveals character," he whispered. "It only exposes what was already there." He stood in silence for a long moment, remembering the man who had taught him that respect should never be measured by money, titles, or expensive clothing. Then he turned and quietly walked away. Life at Kong Global slowly went back to normal. But a better kind of normal. Zara settled into her new office, though she still greeted every cleaner, driver, and visitor with the exact same warm smile she had always worn. Sophia began preparing for university with a hope she never thought was possible. Mr. Harris accepted his award for a lifetime of service with tears in his eyes, saying it was the first time in 30 years anyone had truly thanked him for his work. Mr. Park led his team with fairness instead of fear. One afternoon, Zara caught up with Adrian as he was leaving the building. "Chairman?" she asked. He stopped and smiled at her. "Yes, Zara." She hesitated, then finally asked the question that had been sitting in her heart since the night of the party. "Why did you not tell anyone who you really were? You could have stopped all those insults on the very first day." Adrian looked back toward the front entrance, the same spot where he had once stood quietly in a cheap uniform. Then he smiled gently. "When people think you are powerless," he said, "they show you exactly who they really are." Zara nodded slowly. She finally understood. Some lessons cannot be taught through words. They can only be lived, one quiet day at a time. Months later, people still talked about that night at the founder celebration. The shattered glass, the cancelled engagement, and the quiet security guard who reminded an entire room that true greatness is never announced by a fancy title. It is revealed by character. And maybe that was the real fortune Adrian Kong had inherited all along. Not $80 billion. Not a powerful family name. But the wisdom to see the true value in people, long before the rest of the world ever bothered to look. Because sometimes, the richest person in the room is the one nobody bothers to notice. And sometimes, the uniform people laugh at is worth more than every designer suit standing right beside it. If this story hit you somewhere real, drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were standing in that ballroom? And if you have ever been underestimated by someone who judged you before they knew you, this one's for you. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.